Hello to anyone watching this. Persona 5 is a game about a lot of different things, one of which of course is learning. Which, when I first got the game, I really didn't think it would be something that I'd be too invested in. You know, I thought it would all just be stuff that I'd already learnt in school, and I'd just need a cheeky little browser tab open with all the answers so I could make sure I get the maximum amount of knowledge points possible. But then I got to a lesson that just taught me about something that I didn't even realise was teachable. So today I just wanted to talk about my overall experience with Persona 5's Synesthesia lesson, and just sort of talk about the cases of synesthesia that I have in my life, and just sort of how going through this lesson made me realise how not entirely normal that is, in a good way of course. But before I get into the actual lesson, I do just quickly need to say that I'm really not trying to take the piss with how I pronounce synesthesia. You know, my poor little British dialect can only carry me so far, so I'm trying my best to pronounce it, and as long as it doesn't make your ears bleed, you know, hopefully you can just bear with me throughout this entire video. So firstly, I just want to go through how I was feeling about the game on the day of this lesson. So May 23rd puts us in the middle of the Madarame arc, which I definitely wasn't enjoying as much as the Kamoshida arc, but I was still having fun going day to day and properly starting to get to grips with the social link system and how to properly spend time. So I was really starting to get into the game at this point. In terms of the actual school lessons though, I was way more apathetic. Like, it was nice to see concepts that I was aware of be mentioned, like the placebo effect. And it's always nice to learn more about Japanese history, but especially after the first set of exams, I was just really not that compelled by the overall class system in this game. Like, I'm probably overthinking the importance of lessons or underthinking what some of the lessons were about, but it's just a shame that not too many of them fit in with the overall themes of the game. Like, obviously I'm not expecting the teachers to go on a speech about the nature of thievery, but just some more lessons about how people's mindsets can change would have been appreciated. But, you know, just having lessons at all does really ground the game in a way I can appreciate, so I don't think they detract from the game, even if I would have liked for them to be a bit more, you know? It's one of the main reasons why I enjoy the Synesthesia lesson so much, because it genuinely made me think about how I perceive the world and how others perceive the world. You know, that's the kind of commentary I would have liked to have seen more in these lessons. But getting into the actual lesson, as you can probably guess at the start of it, I wasn't really paying that much attention. You know, I do like to keep up with what the teachers are saying, but I have my cheat sheet anyway, so I don't really need to listen. But then she suddenly talks about seeing music as colour, and it immediately grabs my attention. Like, all throughout my life, I've seen letters and words and numbers and shapes as colours, so to find out that this is an actual thing that has a name to it, it just felt kinda special, you know? Like, obviously I don't think I'm a god or anything because of it, but to just know that this is an actual classifiable thing, it's just cool. And the fact that I wouldn't have found this out unless I played Persona 5, or if some random person in my life mentioned it, it just made it feel really special. And then as the lesson goes on, you obviously get the part where Morgana bitches at you to try and get the right answer to the question, but then when the teacher explains about the composer who sees music in colour, and then the poet who sees colours in letters, I just felt completely seen. Like, that was just the absolute confirmation that this is actually a thing that I do. And then because I got the question right, all of the students are like, wow, he's so cool and smart, which, you know, this time I thought was directly addressed at me, the player. And then that's the end of the lesson, you know? It's weird how just 2 minutes can entirely change how I think about the world, but that's just kind of what happened here. And I just really like how this probably happened with other people as well. Like, just inserting something that can be so relevant to people in this random lesson in the game, rather than just teaching about history or some English concept. I just think that's really novel. You know, it's not meta or fourth wall breaking, but just sort of addressing something that can actually apply to the audience that they don't know applies to them, I just think is really nice. But now we're done with the lesson, I'd just like to take this opportunity to outline my perception of Synesthesia. So, obviously this is going to be complete gibberish to a lot of people, but, you know, this is just going to be a bit of fun for me, just sort of describing part of my worldview. So, the best way I can describe how I perceive these things is through their sense of coolness. Like, I find even numbers to be cool and odd numbers to be uncool. And to boil it down even more, I think that may be due to the kind of sense of order that even numbers have. Like, all of them can divide by 2, and I think that's cool. And odd numbers can't, so that's not cool. But with letters, it's more down to the sounds that they make. Like, I find O's and U's to be quite cool sounding, while E's and I's are sort of, I don't know, sort of uncool. Well, obviously uncool, but I can't describe it. I literally can't describe it, but E is just an uncool letter. But it might also have something to do with their shape, because O and U are quite perfectly rounded. Like, you just need one quick stroke and you've written them. But with an E, it's like a curve, a circle and a curve. And something about that doesn't feel as natural, so it's less cool to me. And it's sort of the same with numbers, I think. Like, 6 I perceive to be a less cool even number, because dividing that by 2 gets you to 3, which is an odd number. And also the fact that it's, well, kind of an E upside down also gives it the same sort of shape factor that's less appealing to me. And that also sort of reverses itself with shapes. I find even numbered sided shapes to be cooler than odd sided shapes, because they have more of a natural symmetry to them, which I just find cooler. It's just sort of layers on top of layers, really. But in terms of the actual colours that I perceive it all as, you know, that's a lot more stereotypical. Like, dark blues and purples are the cool colours, while bright or pastel yellows are the uncool colours. So, without going through the entire dictionary or counting up to 1,000,000, I'd just like to give some very specific examples of what I see certain words and number-digit combinations as. The main uncool word that I always like to come back to is prime. You know, like I said, the I and the E sounds are quite unappealing, so that makes the word feel quite yellow. But then when you add in a P and an M, specifically the M sort of cools it back down a bit. So I'd say it's kind of closer to orange, but, you know, definitely yellow-orange. Double O words are pretty much always a shade of red for me. Like, the double O is really nice. It just obviously depends on what the letters surrounding it are. Like, boot is definitely closer to purple, while mood is closer to orange. For numbers, we can kind of circle it back to words, because I see basically all prime numbers, apart from 2 obviously, as, you know, yellowy orange, which obviously relates to how I see the word prime itself. So maybe that's sort of how I started to get that connection, you know, seeing all these uncool numbers related to a word that's got an I and an E in it. Maybe that sort of made a link in my head. But in terms of the main even numbers, you know, like I said, 6 is not the coolest, but I'd still say it's a nice bright purple. But I'd say that 8 is an even brighter purple, nearing red, just because of the E and I sounds in its pronunciation. And the coolest number is definitely 4, like with its O and U right next to each other. There's just something unstoppably cool about it to me. And it's probably helped by the fact that my favourite number is 16, and obviously the square root of 16 is 4. And the colour that I would give 16 is definitely a nice neon orange. And neon orange is my favourite colour, so that's probably me just desperately trying to connect those together in my head, but still, you know, it's all coming together. The last example I'd like to go through sort of brings everything that I've been saying together, and that's the days of the week. The fact that they're in a numerical order sort of inherently gives them a colour to start off with, but then it comes down to the combination of letters that they have, as well as sort of my general feelings towards that time of the week. Like Monday and Sunday being the 2 ends of the week, alongside having the O and U sounds, make them feel more red to me, while Wednesday and Friday being in the middle makes them feel less cool to me, so they're much more yellow. Meanwhile, Thursday has always been the coolest day of the week to me, so that's just a nice dark blue. See, when I properly explain all of these things, at least to me it makes more sense. Like, I feel if I had any sort of programming knowledge, I could easily make up a little program that lets you type in whatever number or word that you want, and I can automatically assign what colour I'd give it. You know, it's just sort of a way to quantify everything beyond any sort of reasonable comprehension, I suppose. So yeah, that's sort of everything that I wanted to say about this topic. It's just, this is what's so fun about having a platform to give out my opinion. I can give out my opinion on basically anything, as long as it's somewhat palatable, and just in general, this was really fun to make and just sort of think over exactly what colours I think of all these things. But yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, do let me know. Just, obviously each Persona game has its own thematic colour, and while I may disagree with which colours they picked for each number, you know, the themes of each game do add up for the colour in the end. But if the leaks are true and Persona 6's colour is green, they're going to have to do way more convincing for me to believe that's the right colour for that number. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.